have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron. Hello, Aaron. Hey.
Hey, howdy.
Hey.
Hello.
Hater, old ear. Anyways, yeah, so are you ready for today's film, man?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. I didn't forget what it is. What are we watching?
We're watching Carrie.
Carrie! That's right, alright. I'm ready for it.
Alright, awesome. So,
Stephen King.
Yes, and it's an adaptation of Stephen King's first novel, Carrie, which I will ask you, do you know anything about Carrie whatsoever?
No. I know Stephen King is horror writer, and the way you make good movie is you adapt Stephen King book. So, probably gonna be good. I don't know.
Yes, every Stephen King adaptation has always been good and never bad or cringe whatsoever. Don't refute me on that. Just totally take my word. They're totally not.
So far, they've been pretty good. The ones we watched on the podcast, so far they've been pretty good. You know, we got it. We got the slashy axie man McGee.
Yeah, The Shining.
The Shining. Yeah. You know. Green Mile, that was a weird curveball for your horror movie podcast. Go watch it. We watched Green Mile together.
Wait, did we?
No.
I am legit, like, I was at that thing, I'm like, I don't believe we watched it, but I don't want to sound like a jerk, be like, we didn't watch it. And it's like, look back, episode 37.
Green Mile, come on.
Yes.
I thought it was weird at the time, but I guess it has horror elements. So.
Yeah, you know, it's fine. We watch American Psycho. We're willing to stretch the boundaries.
Branch out, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, I was very surprised because I mean, I wouldn't say whenever it comes to Carrie, it's like as recognizable as say like Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, something like that. But I always knew about Carrie in the background, but I won't spoil the reason. I had already it's known for one scene in particular. And it might be one of those things where you watch it because they've done so many parodies of the scene and everything that you're like, oh, that's where it's from. So I'm gonna keep on the DL about that. But it's like that one famous scene that everybody basically knows Carrie for. Or at least I argue it's a scene everybody knows Carrie for. But aside from that one scene, I hadn't really ever known too much about the film Carrie. I know they had a remake in, I want to say it was like 2013, I want to say, which I still need to watch that one as well. But this one is from 1976, so it's almost 50 years old. Starring Sissy Spacek and John Travolta.
Oh.
Yes, this is one of John Travolta's first films.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm really curious about rewatching it because like Night of the Living Dead from the last episode, it's been a very long time since I've seen this film. Like probably, I want to say at least 10. It's been about a decade. It's been a hot minute, basically, since I've seen this film. But it's been one that I've been wanting to come back to. And I have a lot of stuff I want to say about the film. But like I said, I'm going to save it for the review section. Because I kind of want you to get kind of a complete, blind, first-time experience since you don't know anything about Carrie whatsoever.
My little blind date with Carrie right now.
Yes.
I don't know anything.
Yes, I'm sure that'll go perfectly well and nothing will go horribly wrong for you,
Aaron.
Aaron.
Does.
No, it doesn't. So let's go check out and see how Carrie's doing, and we'll be right back after we watch, well, Carrie.
Carrie!
Carrie.
Poppin the Scary.
Hello, I'm Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey.
Then the unthinkable happened.
And we are back from watching Carrie.
Carrie!
Carrie!
Hey!
Mon Sherry.
Yeah, we're gonna carry on.
Yes,
this
yeah.
podcast. You know what I'm
You
saying?
betcha. Yeah, I'm still rocking and rolling there. So, Aaron,
Yeah.
how was it getting to meet Carrie?
It was good. Yeah, that was a good movie. I really did not have much of a context going in. I've heard people reference Carrie, but I don't remember anything that anybody said. Like I'm aware of Carrie's existence, but I don't think I was aware of the plot or anything that happened. And I mean it was good. I don't know what to say without saying something that I can't say. But it was I liked the characters, I liked the plot. It was sort of horror light. There were some horror elements, but for most of the movie, it wasn't like ghouls and goblins and ghosts. It was there's maybe a spooky moment or two, but not really like overt horror. But I mean, towards the end, things definitely got horrific in a flashy way. So.
Yes, and without spoiling anything, of course, for the few individuals who probably don't know, did you figure out quickly what scene I was talking about that it's well known for?
Yeah, they definitely built up to the scene and everything too. So I was like, yeah, I think this is probably what he's talking about.
After watching it, had you ever seen that scene parody before in other shows and popular media?
I can't think of one specifically, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, I think the setting and concept are pretty have been done many times, but I don't know that I don't know that scene.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Just was curious about it, but yeah, definitely good thoughts to hear overall. I'm pretty much echoing the same sentiment. I've seen it once, and I remember liking it there, but I will say, and I'll talk about it more, this is the last film I remember watching that kind of left me disturbed afterwards there. This is one of those rare films, and I will say disturbed in a good way, because I feel like I've watched a lot of just atrocious stuff that I'm like, this is just awful. This is just straight awful. But I feel like with the way Carrie is done, it was done effectively. So that's major kudos, especially being a little bit desensitized to horror and everything that happens. So that was the main reason why I was so curious to come back and watch this film again, just to see how I felt. And good news is it's really stinking good, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really good. I'll go ahead and talk about the plot here. Basically, as you can imagine with the movie's title, it focuses on the titular character, Carrie, played by Sissy Spacek, who basically is trying to go about her school life, going to high school and everything there. She's in senior year and everything. And when all of a sudden, whenever she's in the women's locker room, she has her period for the first time, which quickly shows her status in the school basically being kind of bottom of the food chain, and unfortunately getting bullied relentlessly. And from there you get a peek inside of Carrie's life and how some people try to help while others try to condemn Carrie. So overall, we've all seen the high school stories about people that have been bullied and everything. We've seen it because that's just kind of unfortunately the circumstance about high school, in a sense. There are bullies and there are those that get bullied there, which is highly unfortunate. So I feel like even though this film was made in the 70s, it's still a plot point that's still relevant in today's culture, I would argue, because everybody can understand the plight that Carrie's going through. And from there, basically kind of seeing where Carrie's life goes as her as she gets towards the end of her school year, is really depressing, but surprisingly also wholesome at a lot of moments, which is kind of surprising because, like you mentioned, this, I feel like horror in general is one of the harder things to categorize whenever it comes to it, because, you know, if I compare this to like other horror films, I wouldn't say like a lot of it is horror. There are definitely some horrific moments there, and by the time you get to the end, it's definitely a horror film.
Right.
But there is a lot of down moments, but at the same point, I was really enjoying the down moments, which I think shows the signs of a good film.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, that we're not needing like action or blood or scary stuff to keep us glued.
Right. Stephen King has always struck me as an author that sort of dips his toe into horror, but is not like an overt horror. Like, obviously people reference Stephen King as a horror author, but he's like so close to not being genre, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because he writes like things that are pretty close to literature, but then it's like, and then supernatural powers or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's like, it's because, and you know, I'm not saying that in a way that's like to dismiss Stephen King's work. Obviously, he's a fantastic author. But he kind of, just to say that he kind of is in that overlap period of like between horror and like straight literature. So I don't know. Anytime I see a movie like this, it's like, yeah, like the whole time I'm watching the film, like to me, most horror films, I don't think it's necessary for horror films. Most horror films have like an element of danger throughout the whole thing, and like in Stephen King, like movies, in books, there's really not like a persistent element of danger every time. You know what I mean? Like with It, there is, you know what I mean, or something. Because it's like scary clown killing people. And in this movie, there just like wasn't. Like, I wasn't worried that Carrie was going to round the corner and get killed, you know what I mean? Or something like, so it was like, you know, it's always interesting to watch and see how he achieves that sort of horror element, because it's not riding on the coattails of, like, jump scares or gory effects constantly or anything like that. But
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. I do think Stephen King has a very interesting way of writing horror, as opposed to like people that are writing, you know, basically horror films.
Right.
I think there's definitely a different method to it, which I think makes it all the more interesting whenever it comes to it there. I will say it's funny because like the name Brian De Palma was familiar to me. I was like, I feel like I've heard that name before with him directing stuff, and it makes sense because he directed Scarface and The Untouchables.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was really, really cool to see there. But I feel like I felt like with Stephen King's literature and the way that Brian De Palma adapted it, I thought it was very well done. There's definitely some stuff that I could see people seeing as a flaw or whatever, because I will say one thing about this film. I really enjoyed this film, and I like this film a ton. I could see why people wouldn't like it, because it is very cheesy at a lot of parts.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
some of that comes with the territory. Just like when you pop in a movie from the 70s or before, it's probably going to have some cheese.
Yes, but for me, it just worked out perfectly there. Like, I feel like cheese can be beneficial. I mean, cheese is delicious.
Put that shit on a cracker. Mm-mm.
Yeah,
You can spread that cheese on this cracker, that's for sure.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Let's talk about the characters.
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously the main one we could totally talk about is Carrie, played by Sissy Spacek, and I think, at least for me, it's safe to say I think she's incredible in this film.
Yeah, no, she does a great job.
Yeah, just absolutely great, because she has to do a lot of emotions there, because, you know, we see her be very introverted, we see her be traumatized and scared, uncertain, but we also get to see her like feel genuinely happy and like
hopeful and like yeah.
We just go through all of these emotions with Carrie, and she pulls it off. And one of the absolute favorite things she does, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to bring up multiple times due to how many times she does it, is she took a lot of inspiration from old Christian paintings there of people being stoned. and everything, as well as like, you know, the very dramatic looks they give, like with the eyes and like how
like
it's
looking
very
up and with the head tilted, like
yes, doing that. I forget what it's called, but it's like some term where, you know, you've seen a lot of art like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Where it's very like not normal expressions. It's very exaggerated, but not like in a cartoonish way, but like in a horrific way.
Yeah.
And just the way she's able just to like widen her eyes and like have her body. I think the thing that also works out in her favor is that Sissy Spacek was very scrawny there, which I think just made it even more sad anytime she was kind of bullied and everything. And this is like, I guess, a slight spoiler, but it's at the beginning of the film whenever she gets the period, is whenever all the girls decide to make fun of her because, you know, she's freaking out because she doesn't know what's going on due to the fact that she has an awful mom, basically. But whenever they decide to make fun of her and start throwing tampons and maxi pads, and then her being cornered, it reminded me of a lot of biblical scenes where like people were stoned and everything. So I thought that was like a very powerful scene that was captured.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you're wondering, if you've ever seen this movie on TV and you were like, I don't remember them throwing tampons and pads at her, it's because that's cut out of the TV version. And we made the mistake of accidentally popping in the TV edit version. And then we were like, well, this is missing some stuff. And then we went back and popped in the DVD. And we were like, it was missing a lot of stuff.
It was weird because, like I said, it had been like 10 years since I'd seen this film. And so, you know, it's like one of those things that I'm like, I remember the shower scene a lot more, but like maybe it's like one of those things that like, oh wow, you know, there's a lot of women in like, you know, their undergarments basically and everything. And I was like, that's so weird, but we kept watching it on. But then as soon as like we could tell that the words were being censored, I'm like,
they were censoring bad words, and I was like, okay, this was not in the original movie.
Yes, so that is a very big warning that if you guys watch it on YouTube, where it's available for free, it is the made for TV version where they do cut out a lot of stuff and try to make it appropriate for TV. They even like cut out scenes, and so whenever we were watching it and then we decide, no, we need to see like the whole thing, we basically popped in my old DVD and fast forward until we got to scenes. And yeah, good lord, I know exactly why I remember the shower scene there, because there was like women trouncing around just fully nude,
breasted boobily down the stairs.
Yes.
It was literally, Stephen King was writing that shit, and they doubted it straight to the movie. These teen girls breasted boobily at each other.
I guess they were just like, we're not gonna have a lot of this, so here it is all at once.
Yeah, at the opening. That's probably the way to do it. You know, you ever notice like a lot of HBO shows will just show like boobies in the first episode and then just like very rarely or never again? Breaking Bad did that shit. Rewatch it, you guys be like, there's no boobies in Breaking Bad. There's boobies. Episode 1, baby. They just show
I
you some
remember
boobies.
That.
And then just like, that's an AMC show, not an HBO. But it's the same thing. They were like, look what we can do. And then they just never do it again because they got to hook you somehow.
Yeah,
they think you think you're gonna watch movies.
I will say, like, obviously, I think the original theatrical scene of the shower scene is a lot more powerful in multiple ways, and one of it is definitely, it's super funny there, but whenever it shows Sissy Spacek bathing, like I said, you know, whenever you watch the TV version, they made sure, like, no nips, no nothing there. Right. You know, you got lucky to see the thigh, but that was kind of important to see the blood running and everything. But I felt like it was a lot more impactful there, just kind of showing her just like...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I said this goal. I was even a little confused initially whenever it shows blood, because they didn't show in the TV cut like the blood running like between her legs or anything like they did in the movie, like the original cut. And so she like has this blood on her hand, and then she's like freaking out, and then it'll show the tampons, and they don't even have the chant where they're like, plug it up, plug it. So like I wasn't 100% sure. I was like, did she just get her first period? I was like, no, she's in high school. That's too late. But like that was the point. But it just wasn't very clear in the TV cut. But the original cut. They made it very clear, and so it was like, okay, I'm glad we went back and watched the original, because that might have been a criticism of mine.
Yes.
Had we not watched some of these scenes and be like, oh, okay, never mind, oops.
Yeah, I felt like the scene was just a lot more powerful. God dang it, I was going to make a joke and say period.
Period.
No, but it really is, because, like, obviously it's just goofy seeing, like, high school girls, do that. I feel like that's just like a popular thing, like just seeing them trounce around everywhere, wearing nothing. But I feel like it was just a very, very private moment with Carrie there, just kind of seeing her be vulnerable and everything, which I think just added more to it. But
And I'm glad you mentioned that it looked like religious figures being stoned or whatever, because I didn't quite put that together, but there's so much, like, religious overtones in this movie, the symbolism, and baked into the characters and the plot and everything else. So
and I feel like because of that might be the reason why I do find it so creepy. Because when we've talked about it before on the Exorcist episode, but whenever it comes to religious horror and stuff like that, it gets under my skin more, because it's like less comprehensible, I suppose, there, as opposed to, like, if a person's chasing you down with a machete, like, yeah, sure, that could happen in real life there, but it's just more kind of fantastical. This just, for me, while it's more supernatural and everything, the imagery they use, the religious imagery and expressions, I think elevates the horror there. It just makes you feel very uneasy. There's something about, like, old Judeo-Christian art that just really gets under your skin. Yeah.
And whenever you, like, really get to the roots of that kind of stuff, I mean, the original, Torah, the Jewish texts, these were literally like wandering desert tribes that were like shamanistic, and they did animal sacrifice, and they were like, this was BC times, baby. I mean, it's actually kind of scary. It was just, over the course of thousands of years, it's become more palatable and spreadable as Christian, Jewish, Muslim messages. But, you look at the roots of that kind of stuff, it was barbaric and scary. Old Testament Bible, baby. God just killing everybody all the time for looking at him funny. That's what it's about. So that's whenever you get back to those roots, and this movie very much delves in that sort of interpretation of the Bible, with her mother being a religious sort of fanatic. But
yeah, and let's talk about Piper Laurie, who plays Margaret Wright. I feel like this is another, like, I guess we're just dunking on the TV edit there, but they cut out one scene that introduces her, because whenever we were fast forwarding it, I'm like, I don't remember this scene, but it, like, introduces Margaret, basically, who's basically being an evangelist there, trying to talk about Jesus saving people and everything, and that's her introduction to her character. And then whenever she gets home, she's like a different flavor of a big old evangelist, basically.
Yeah, different, like, she's going door to door and people are like, no thank you, kind of thing, and she's like that version of, like, quote unquote crazy, but then when she gets home, she's like actually crazy, and abusive and awful.
And I felt, because, like, in the TV edit, they skip, like, her visiting, like, the other house, basically, and the first time we see her is in Carrie's home. And I felt like, obviously I felt like the introduction scene was still strong, seeing her be very already hateful towards Carrie, because she's like, I got a phone call from the school. They said you had your period, you're a woman now, which means you have sinned. And so then it goes into this big tirade. And again, that's like, that's a very powerful scene, but I feel like having that contrast to how she presents herself to the public versus how she is at home is a lot more scarier, I would say.
Right, yeah. And because, Carrie just had had to play a really interesting role in school, where, the actress that plays her, Sissy Spacek, is that it?
Yes.
Had to be believably, like, I'm struggling to find the right words to say this, believably bullied and believably bullyable, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because she had to be this person that was like traumatized at home, but like maybe that's not obvious to the kids, but that's why she's so quiet and scared and skittish and stuff. And it's not like, I don't know, she did a fantastic job of like translating that's why she's that way at school or whatever, is because her home life is spooky. But
that's a really good point there, because I do think it is kind of laughable whenever you watch films and it's like, oh yeah, nobody likes them, but it's still, they're gorgeous and everything.
Right. It's either that or it's like the just total stereotype of like some nerd with like big glasses,
yes, like really
suspenders and like, well, let me go to Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, you know. But it's like, yeah, it's a really delicate subject to perceive somebody as both like sympathetic to the audience, but also like, I would probably like just walk by that kid and think nothing about it, you know?
Yeah, no, and I think like Sissy was perfectly casted for that, and you know, I feel like, again, she had a hard role to achieve, but I feel like she just honestly, like, I had zero issues with her acting whatsoever there. And, you know, the scenes with Piper Laurie, they're just basically, let's be honest, bullying Carrie.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just like guilt tripping her, just being like, you know, you're a sinner, you've been sinning, haven't you? And just basically tormenting her, and then locking her in a closet saying like, okay, you need to pray, and she's stuck there for like the entire afternoon. It's just heartbreaking, and it is kind of like a horror film basically, but it's like that different level of horror. It's just more just, you feel awful about it, and then you're also scared because like it's just that, like, that control that she has over Carrie and everything is just kind of terrifying to watch. And like, and it's so bad too, because you see how broken Carrie is, because as soon as she gets out of the closet, you know, the mother isn't paying attention to her, just still sewing, and then Carrie says like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed now, I feel all better, thank you, Mom, you know. And doing that and then giving a kiss, like, this is just a daily routine, which just makes it more depressing there. But yeah, Piper Laurie did a very good job conveying that she was a crazy acolyte, basically, for Jesus.
Yes, in the worst way possible.
Yeah, because even, like, the home, like, how dark and, like, dingy it is with, like, candles lit, and then you see, like, a Last Supper tapestry, and let me tell you what, that is, like, a disturbing crucifix they keep in the closet of Jesus with the glowing eyes.
With his eyes open, yeah, it's bizarre, and I mean, there's such great cinematography in this. It's not flashy, but it's so great. I think one of these early scenes, she's, like, in the bathroom brushing her teeth or something in the mirror, and you just see this like hovering head of Jesus in the background, because it's like he's always watched, he's always being watched, you know.
It really is like very disturbing how they do it, but they make sure to shoehorn into the White household basically every picture of Jesus they can.
Yeah, and it's not the pretty ones either. It's the crucifix ones with the blood running down, and it is sort of, you know, borderline occult in a way.
Yeah,
you know, it's like weird.
Another thing I do have to mention, and this might be a criticism later, is just how very few people there are that genuinely care about Carrie. Like, because it not only stems with like Carrie's like student peers, but even teachers are so just nonchalant and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is legitimately, as sad as it is, just how bullying was in the 70s. Before, I mean, for most of American history, like, bullying was done by the teachers, by the principals, like, it was institutionalized. We had the privilege of growing up in the 90s and beyond, where, you know, the kids that were bullied in that era are now the teachers and stuff, and are like, okay, we have to put in these like no tolerance policies, and so bullying ain't what it used to be. Let me tell you, back in the day, you know, no, but like seriously, it was you know, participated in by many others, and just like, if you were weird, then like, that Carrie kid's a queer, ain't she? You know, whatever. Yeah, you just it was, everybody kicked them out while they were down.
Yes.
But yeah, modern age, it's a little bit different. We have a little bit more sympathy for people, but it's so that part didn't really like I found that believable, I guess.
Well, that's good. That's good, yeah. And I'll talk more about it there, but like some of the moments that's still like I feel like are great moments, but also just like, oh, come on, dude. Like whenever the principal keeps getting Carrie's name wrong, like saying
That
like
one,
Casey, Cassie.
Cassie, well, and he just keeps addressing her by the name that's wrong. Cassie, and she's like, it's Carrie.
Yeah. And it was just like one of those things that they do a very good job showing how Carrie has very few people who care about her.
Yeah.
There.
She does have a couple in her corner.
Yes, exactly.
One
like
is Coach whatever.
Yes, Miss Collins,
Miss
played by
Collins.
Betty Buckley there, who plays the PE teacher, which I think is a really interesting thing because if you've viewed a lot of the depictions of PE coaches, it's usually like, all right, listen up, boys and girls, we're going to be running laps. And, you know, they usually hate, like, you know, the scrawny, not athletically inclined kids there. But she really just sympathizes and connects with Carrie. And that's honestly just another thing that I love about this film is just the moments that they have connect. Because you do believe that Miss Collins genuinely cares about Carrie's well-being and everything. Like, there's constant moments that solidify it. It's not like one of those things like, why does this person care?
Right.
There. She, like, sympathizes with her there and is constantly having to, like, give her pep talks there, be there for her emotionally. And it's honestly great. Like, and it's one of those things that you would think like, oh, no action means no good. No, the slow moments are actually really good.
Yeah.
It's genuinely good, and I believed her as well because that's the other thing too. Like Miss Collins was seen being super sweet, but she's not a pushover at all. Like,
no, she's not, and I also love that she like acknowledges that Carrie's a little strange. You know what I mean?
Yes.
She's not just the teacher that's like a I'm gonna be in your corner no matter what, and like all these other kids are just wild, you know. There's a great scene where she's like pep talking Carrie about like you're beautiful, and like after something happened where, you know, Carrie's not dumb and she feels like she was about to be manipulated into something, and she explains this to the teacher and they're talking and she's like, it's gonna be okay, and then the very next scene is like her talking to the people responsible to that and be like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
That's so good.
They're like, we're innocent. And they're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
I know what you're doing. Stop.
Yeah, I just love how she takes, like, no crap whatsoever. She is very much, like, not to be trifled with. And students do try pushing her buttons, but she doesn't buckle down. She just basically pushes back and stands her ground. Oh, dude, the amount of slapping in this film is insane. Like, you know, Carrie's mom slapping her. The gym teacher is... well, the gym teacher slapped Carrie because she was, like, hysterical.
That's true.
There,
she
and
slaps another student at one point.
Like, there is so much slapping across the board.
Dude, the Foley artist for this movie was probably back there like, all right. Got calluses on these hands. Keep slapping. I need sound effects.
Dude, it's great. It's great because it also just feels out of left field because, again, that would not fly at all whatsoever in a school system. But again...
You can't even, like, hug kids in public schools anymore, much less slap.
Oh my gosh. But I felt like Betty did a very good job, and she was a really... nice addition to the film, and she performed it super well to where there is a lot of heartwarming moments with her and Carrie, so that's like major kudos. Moving over to some of the students there, I suppose we could talk about the mean girl Chris Hargensen, played by Nancy Allen, and my golly gosh, this gal holds a vendetta like nobody's business.
She mad. She's definitely plays the role of the girl that's like the bully, and then like whenever the bullied victim is like getting something good, she's like, I can't have that. I need you to be miserable all the time.
Yeah. She definitely does a good job of just being very spiteful and mean. However, I will say it does get to a point that I'm like, oh my gosh, this this gal is obsessive.
Let it go.
And like, while I do agree, like bullying like that happens, the length she goes to is absolutely mind-boggling. There, that
it is elaborate.
Yes, yeah, it definitely goes far, and I'm not saying it can't happen, because I know students have the potential to be some of the most awful creatures on planet Earth.
Oh yeah.
But it is definitely like one of those things. Like, this is almost pulling me out of like believing it, but it keeps me just in enough to be like, okay, yeah, sure, I buy it.
Right.
There, but it does definitely push it. But again, I don't feel like that's more of the actress's fault as it is just the writing like demands that she goes as far, because that's kind of the point of the film, is to have somebody so antagonistic towards Carrie and is determined to make her life a living hell.
Oh, absolutely.
So I feel like Chris is very good, not to mention that she is very hateful, not only to Carrie, but to others, as well as trying to manipulate so many others. Like, she is obsessing over this, like Regina George levels of obsession there.
Absolutely.
But I thought overall still did a really good job.
Yeah.
And then we got to see a fresh face, John Travolta playing Billy Nolan. I believe this is like one of his first films.
I think he did a good job just being like the douchebag sportsman, you know what I mean? He was the boyfriend to bully girl, and he's also a little messed up in the head, likes control, isn't afraid to get violent, does quite a bit of the slapping.
Dude, I think he gets the most slaps, I think.
Yeah, we need to... If you ever do a drinking game for Carrie, every time somebody gets slapped, you gotta
that
take
would
a
be
drink.
so good. That would be so good every time someone gets slapped.
Yep.
Take a shot. Oh my gosh, that's terrific. But, you know, I think John Travolta, for me, is like the equivalent of, like, Nicolas Cage, where he's just funny to watch. He's
always John Travolta. Yeah.
Yes, because he's like, hey, you know, doing that, and it's like, I love it. You know, I can't say that I'm like, oh man, he really dug deep into his character. No, he's just being the douchebag, you know, boyfriend who's helping with the schemes and everything.
Yes, but I thought he was a good fit for that role.
Oh, yeah. Perfectly cast. Yeah. Zero stuff. It's just one of those things that whenever it comes to the complexity of the characters, his is definitely a lot more Fisher-Price than calculus that Sissy Spacek had going on. Right. But I think that just comes down to who the character is.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I'm sure Stephen King didn't have like a big thing. He's just like, I'm going to write a douchebag boyfriend.
A meathead man.
Yes.
Not afraid to do what he has to do. Get his hands dirty. I was about to say something, but I'll save it for spoilers.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We could talk about that. But overall, he was fun to watch. Yeah. Definitely fun to watch, and I felt like he did a good job overall. Whenever it comes to the other students, I mean, there's definitely like some others you could point out to. I think there's really only two other ones I think really play a major role there. One of them being Snoo Snail, played by Amy Irving. And it was kind of interesting with her character there, because her character kind of takes a turn, because she kind of was one of the ones that would bully Carrie. But it's interesting the levels of bullying they have, because you look at the bully Chris, and she's like, all poker chips are in on the bully thing.
Right.
And meanwhile, with Sue, basically, she's kind of like, she bullies her, but then she feels like a sense of guilt afterwards there. But it's very interesting to see. And that's why I think it's another important scene that they show, because whenever Margaret White went over to a house, it's revealed that it's Sue's home that she went to. So it shows that they know, because already Sue's mom had already established that Margaret has been over there multiple times. They even have a phone call talking about it, like, yeah, she's over here.
Just get rid of her. Yeah,
I'm doing that, and I think that just allows Sue to be more sympathetic towards Carrie. And then she just genuinely tries to be nicer to her, and I really like that a ton, because I feel like it's a lot better if I feel like there are multiple people kind of rooting for the underdog, basically, as opposed to
Right.
like nobody likes the underdog,
Yeah.
nobody's there for him or whatever.
Absolutely. I also thought it was interesting the way it was portrayed because, like, you can never really trust anybody in this movie. So she's, like, being nice, but part of me was like, what's her angle?
Yes, I legit was thinking that same thing as well. And so you don't know if she's, like, adding to something, but I think that's what kind of makes it a much more interesting story there.
Right. You kind of reflect Carrie's view there, who has learned to be cautious and suspicious of everybody that tries to be nice to her. And so the audience is also harbors that same suspicion of like, why are you being nice?
Yes, but I felt like, her character doesn't get too much screen time there, but for the time that she's on there, I feel like she's perfectly serviceable and helps the plot along. And it definitely towards the end of the film, she gets a lot more screen time to really kind of show more of her character.
True.
So I thought that was nice. And I thought it was nice also that, her boyfriend, Tommy Ross, played by William Catt, I really liked his character's introduction there.
Yeah.
I felt like it was really good because that's another thing I remember being in high school because, it's like whenever they were in poetry class or whatever, you know how it is. You feel vulnerable whenever you put something out there and you don't want to be made fun of or whatever. And so he had wrote a poem and everything, and of course people are like giggling at it or whatever. But then whenever Carrie like compliments it there, whenever the teacher was asking for criticisms, I think that's like kind of like a nice sweet moment that kind of establishes some ground, which makes their connection more believable later. Like it doesn't feel like they have nothing in common whatsoever. So, and I felt like William Catt, I feel like he has some riz. He had some riz going on.
He was rizzed up. Oh yeah, he was doing his part, man. He was getting in there.
Yeah, I felt like he, was believable as like one of the pretty boys in high school there and everything. And so I think honestly it helps. I felt like the casting for this film was really good. I genuinely felt like every character was believable and appropriately cast to do stuff. So I mean, overall, I really enjoyed seeing his character surprisingly there, because I know a lot of times they'll set up these characters and they're about as deep as a puddle, basically.
Right.
But they were just very likable and everything, and you were okay with seeing where everybody was going, because it doesn't focus all on Carrie. It does jump to other characters to show what they're doing. So I think it is super important that you have a good solid lineup, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I will give one, I guess, honorary mention to Norma, played by PJ Souls, and her dedication to the hat.
Yeah, the heck. That was a funny bit. She's seen throughout the movie with the hat on, like, at all times, and at times it gets ridiculous. She's in the hair salon at one point, and the hat is, like, over the hair dryer thing that she has over her perm.
Yeah, it's just goofy, and I can't say there's too much to her character besides just the hat and just being very quirky and awful.
Yeah, she's kind of a henchman to the other bullies, She does the steps necessary to do some more elaborate bullying.
Yes, but I mean, that being said, I still felt like it was very well performed. I mean, for what little she had, and that hat kills me. That hat is just the funniest thing, because even towards the end of the film, she's still rocking it there.
I was expecting it to like come off, and it was because she's hiding a bald spot or something, and then everybody laughs at her, but no such just desserts.
No. But yeah, I would argue those are probably the main characters. Like I said, there are some characters like, the douchey poetry teacher that makes fun of Carrie openly in class there because she said, like, she thought that the poem was beautiful, and he's like, beautiful. I don't think that's much of a criticism for Tommy's poem.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah. But I do, and this is another thing to go back to Tommy's character. I do like how they show that he does have morals and he does have sympathy for Carrie a little bit, even though he doesn't openly show it. Because again, it's not the cool thing to do to care for the bullied person. So yeah, I mean, I felt like it was a good solid lineup of characters to tell this film. One thing I will say, I am very surprised with how much foreshadowing they throw in this film. Like, they are showing every step of the way where there's like no surprises and everything, which you would think maybe ruins the film, but I feel like it kind of heightens it, because it's like, have you heard, I can't remember this, I remember this from a movie class in college, talking about like Alfred Hitchcock talking about how basically if the audience knows there's a bomb underneath the table and the people talking don't know, it makes it more suspenseful, as opposed to if you didn't know and it blows up. I feel like that rule's coming into play.
Oh yeah.
And I felt like that was the point, which I think works out good, because I think that's what makes like that final scene more powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just knowing that everything can't go right, and what's not gonna go right, but it's just a matter of like when and who's in on it and who's not, and is it gonna happen, and like, all those sorts of those tense moments that would have definitely just not existed if they hadn't shown us the setup,
Yeah. But I felt like the pacing overall, there was never a point where I'm like, okay, come on, get on with the film. I felt like the pacing is honestly pretty good. I mean, it's an hour and 38 minutes long, and it just goes by smoothly.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's another praise for this film, that it's just paced very nicely, to where there's not really a moment. I mean, there's definitely some goofy moments. Like I said, I think that's one of those things that, like, yes, I can acknowledge there's a lot of cheese. Like, whenever Miss Collins is having all the girls do like those like warm-ups and everything, and it's playing like that music there.
Oh, they just do like a full like workout montage. I was expecting by the end of them all these girls were gonna be buff and like win the state championship or something, because it was just music and working out for like 2 minutes.
Yeah, and it's like definitely like cheesy, but at the same point, I think the cheese is just what heightens this film for me there, where it's just highly enjoyable, and it's kind of a nice break from a lot of the depressing scenes whenever it happens. But I felt like overall, like, story's good, pacing's good. I do also love the music there, how very melodic it is. So that's another thing that I'm very, very, very much a big fan of. I'm honestly trying to think of anything that I wasn't quite as big of a fan of whenever it came to it.
Yeah, there's nothing in there that's just like, well, that's stinky. You know what I mean? It's just like there's little things here and there that I would chip off. Like, well, that was kind of corny, or, whatever. But overall, I feel like everything was at worst good. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think that's honestly a pretty good thing to say, which the music done by Pino Donaggio. I just feel like that's another thing that hides this film, because it does. I do love the flute that they use. You never hear a lot of flute used in music, but again, it could be 70s thing. Yeah. Where the flutes at?
I love a good flautist.
Flute, please. But I think that's honestly an accurate depiction. Is there anything else we can talk about, or you want to talk about before getting to spoilers?
I don't think so. Yeah, I definitely think this is a delicate one where it's all building up to like one big moment at the end for most of the movie. So it's kind of hard to talk about. We can't talk about the specifics of the build-up, nor can we talk about the big moment.
Yes.
But I thought it was, I think overall that they did a wonderful job of really realistically zoomed out, cutting off a few details here and there. It's like the story of a girl that was bullied in high school, and so to make that interesting without, relying too heavily on horror and this and that, is very much to this film's credit, because then whenever you do get those little moments, they feel so much more surreal and occult. So I give it a lot of props, but excited to talk about those moments in spoilers.
Yeah. So let's let's give our ratings real quick before diving into spoiler territory. So, Aaron, please lead the way and tell the audience what you rate Carrie.
Man, I'll get right into it. This is a 9 out of 10 for me. It's 9 out of 10.
Hell yeah.
It's really good. I hesitate to give it a 10 out of 10 because 10 out of 10 to me, like, everything's perfect. You know what I mean? Perfect. And like I said, this one, at worst, some things were just good, which is definitely a great, floor to build your movie on, is just good. And then there were some things that were excellent. Yeah, I think Sissy Spacek's entire performance was excellent. I think most of the acting was really good, especially for this era. The music was, like, just good for me. The editing and cinematography, I thought, well, editing maybe not as much. Cinematography, I thought, was fantastic. It's really, again, I said earlier, it's not flashy, but it's just these little small attention to details that just really heighten a movie that is so heavily invested in symbolism and foreshadowing and having little details that you can kind of pick up on and then see later. And like we talked about with, even biblical symbolisms and just these sorts of things where you can sort of see every frame a painting. I think it's I think they did a marvelous job on those aspects specifically, but like everything was good. I even things that I say chip points off of. I'm not really chipping points off of anything because I think this was just an overall incredibly solid movie that just like maybe like one scene or two could have been shaved down. That montage shouldn't have been that long. The TV version did cut out that part where she goes to her house, and honestly, I thought it was a kind of silly depiction of a mom that was otherwise like just creepy and evil for the rest of the movie. And just little tiny nitpicks is really what keeps this a 9 instead of a 10 out of me for me. But no, I think it was an incredibly well done story, simultaneously a story of a coming of age of a bullied, repressed woman who becomes something more of her own in her own way, and also a horror movie about the occult and the negative effects of bullying and a little bit of maybe supernatural flavor. So that's my rating.
Yeah, I think that's honestly pretty good. Solid points all around there, and I'm pretty much on the exact same page as you are there, because I was thinking about it there, and I already knew halfway through, I'm like, this is going to be a higher rated film, because I remembered a lot of the points and everything there, but by the end, it just got to a point that I'm like, this is easily a 9, if not 9.5 there. I waver on that, whether it's just kind of like the high of like, oh man, this film is really good, riding off that high there. But at the very least, it is more than deserving of a 9 out of 10. I feel like I'm surprised this film, like, I feel like this film is talked about enough, but it's not talked about enough, if that makes sense. Yeah. I feel like it's right on the cusp of being talked about just enough there, but I feel like a lot of people should watch it. And in all honesty, whenever it comes to horror films, I mean, it is definitely horrific there, but I would say that, it's really only a few select scenes that is, horrific. And I think because of the lack of like, terror that you feel in a lot of scenes, because it's just more kind of everyday sort of life, kind of getting to experience it there, it heightens the horror even more, which I think is fantastic. And I feel like folks should definitely try to watch it. If you can, try to get a physical copy there. Yeah. I mean, if you absolutely must, just try to avoid the one on YouTube. I feel like it's fine. I just feel like it holds it back.
Yeah,
a bit.
I agree, yeah.
It's like one of those things. I mean, I feel like you could say that with any movie for TV there.
True.
Basically, I feel like it's always...
Some of them are amplified in funny ways. You should watch Snakes on a Plane TV version. You should watch the Big Lebowski TV version. But only if you've seen those movies in their original form first.
Yes, I need to watch the TV version of Big Lebowski, because that's one of my favorite films. It's like,
you see what happens when you feed a stoner scrambled eggs?
You see what happens
feed a stranger
when you find a stranger in the Alps.
Yes, that's what it was.
See what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps?
Gosh, so good. So good. I heard that side bit. I heard they improvised a lot of that. Like the Coen brothers, are like just say whatever.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh,
The
man.
snakes on the plane one's good too. He's like, I'm tired of these Monday, Friday snakes on my monkey flighting plane.
I never heard that one. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, that's so good, dude. Yeah, but I mean, I'm echoing the same points Aaron did, though. Basically, like, Sissy Spacek does an incredible, amazing job, and she deserves all the recognition and praise for this film. Brian De Palma did an excellent film directing Carrie. I feel like it's definitely one of the top adaptations done by Stephen King's novels.
Yeah.
There, especially if
and there's some great ones out there.
Yes, for sure, and there's also some really bad ones. But that's neither here nor there. Definitely, if you have a chance to watch it, just please do. It's really good, and definitely if you love horror and you haven't seen it for whatever reason, definitely go out and watch it. You know, it's really good. It's really good. So yeah, with that said, let's talk about spoilers. So now's your time to head on out in case you don't want to get spoiled. And of course, I have a feeling I know what spoiler we're going to talk about first, but I will still let you take it away because I am genuinely curious about if it's the spoiler I think it's going to be.
Do you think it's going to be the big one? Or
yes, the big one.
Oh, I was going to do a funny one.
Oh, do the funny one then. Yes.
I just wanted to talk about John Travolta killing a pig.
Oh my god. John Travolta scenes is just so goofy. It's so goofy because, like, again, like, whenever he's cruising through town, you know, chugging beers and talking to people, sidecar and everything, and then Chris basically starts giving him head to convince him to bully Carrie.
Right, she has to, like, build this crew. She's like Nick Furying a bullying crew, you know what I mean?
Yes. But yeah, whenever it comes to them going to the pig farm, yeah, that's a wild scene.
Yeah, they're all like hyping this one buddy up, the doofus that's like one of the henchmen, the guy that's dating the hat girl, I guess. They're like, they give him the sledgehammer and they're talking about the pigs and I'm gonna kill one of these pigs, and he walks up to the fence and has the thing and he's like, I can't do it, man. Gives it to John Travolta and he's like, I knew you'd pussy out, and then John Travolta just slams a pig's head in over and over, and they don't really show it, but they show his girlfriend chanting like, do it.
Yeah, she, like I said, her vendetta is huge. Like, she wants to see Carrie's life destroyed.
Right.
All because she had to go to detention.
Yeah.
That's
But she blames Carrie for sending her to detention, and then she blames Carrie for not being able to go to the prom, even though all these things are her fault. She's the one that bullied Carrie. She's the one that refused to be in detention and went up to give the coach a piece of her mind and got slapped.
So good. But yeah, no, that was a goofy scene for sure.
It was. Now we're talking about it, I do realize it kind of does feed into some of this religious imagery, because, like, why are they spilling pig's blood all over? But, like, it's literally like animal sacrifice, and it was kind of weird, and, like, he's just killing this pig, and she's like, do it, and they're chanting, you know? It really is just sort of like another little nugget of, like, weird religious iconography as we go into the story that obviously centers around Carrie and her supernatural and weird family home life. But I guess that's another aspect we talk about is Carrie's powers that we didn't get to talk about.
I'm curious. I want to know, where did you know where this movie was going whenever you realized she had telekinetic powers?
I thought it was pretty well telegraphed. Like, even though I was like, all right, this is all heading to a scene where she kills everybody at prom. Like, it was pretty, like, obviously I wasn't 100% sure, but, like, when she started moving the ashtray and then she, like, breaks the mirror and everything, I was like, she's probably going to kill her mom, because, dude, that's the source of her abuse, and she's probably going to at least kill her bullies or whatever.
Yeah.
Some fit of rage or whatever. Like, that seemed to be what the movie was hinting at, and I picked up on it.
Yeah. Well, that being said, what did you think of the body count?
Pretty impressive. Yeah. I didn't think she was gonna kill like the majority of her school. I thought she killed like everybody that was there, but I mean, obviously at the end, at least one of them escaped. But
yeah, and that's that scene. I mean, that's the scene that the film's famous for, even to the point like this is the movie poster.
Oh yeah, wow.
If you've got a taste for terror, take Carrie to prom.
It does kind of, spoiler alert, yeah.
Yeah, like, this is the big thing. Everybody remembers it there. So that's why I was genuinely surprised you didn't know about that.
I do think I've seen at least some depiction of Sissy Spacek covered in blood like that, but I didn't know that it was Carrie, and I didn't know that that's what it was leading to, but...
But, yeah, because that's, like, kind of the crazy thing, because, you know, whenever she gets the blood dumped on her, which I will admit the scene is drawn out incredibly long.
It is, but it like introduces things, like the scene is all slow motion and nobody's talking, but it introduces like, because up until that point I wasn't 100% sure that girl that let her boyfriend take her to prom or whatever was doing it. Because, like, and then when I saw her there at prom sneaking by the stage, I was like, oh, was she in on it the whole time? And, like, that's why she was doing it, is so she could make sure that the blood gets poured on her, and haha. But I was like, oh, then once you realize in the midst of that she looks up at where the rope is heading, because she's been standing by it the whole time. I thought she was going to be the one that pulled it, you know what I mean? But then she looks up and sees the blood, or the bucket of something up there, and she looks down and sees where the rope is heading and tries to uncover them, but then the coach like pulls her out or whatever. So it is a really long, drawn out, like, yay, Carrie, woo, scene, but it is like they do so much storytelling without any narrative. But
I would agree with that. It's one of those things that I'm like, I can see that as a flaw, but I like it. I felt like that, and it's only because of that Miss Collins dragging Sue out that she throws her out of the gymnasium, because she's like, you're not supposed to be here. You're going to do something mean to Carrie. I know it.
Oh, I didn't catch that detail that she was thrown out.
Yeah, because she got thrown out, and then that's whenever the pig's blood spills on Carrie and everything, that she's like using her telekinesis to start locking doors and start going crazy, basically. Which, again, that you get more of her absolutely flawless performance and the gaze that she gives. You could tell she has snapped. And I think the thing that's like really it's wonderfully done, but also really depressing, is, you know, whenever she's going through the shock of basically having blood dropped on her, and, you know, as the night continued on, that basically her date genuinely started falling in love. Granted, it was pretty fast how quickly he fell in love with her, but at the same point, I do believe Tommy did care about it. But
yeah, he definitely at the very least like started seeing her as a person and empathized with her.
Yes, exactly. And so whenever Tommy is trying to help and then the bucket drops on his head, like knocking him unconscious, spilling more blood onto Carrie, and just her like giving these strong looks, because she has those piercing blue eyes as she's drenched in blood, and like looking. But, like, one thing I was going to say that was very depressing is she's looking at the crowd, and of course there's some jackwagons that are laughing at her and everything. And it's like usual people, but then she starts seeing people that, you know, she believed care for her, like Miss Collins, the gym teacher's laughing at her, but really she wasn't at all.
Right.
It's just the fact that her mom's words got to her, saying they're all going to laugh at you. And all those insecurities just crumble in on her as she's going through this shock.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just an incredibly powerful scene. And one thing. Speaking of her mom, one little detail that I've only started to put together after the film was over is that, you know, whenever she's trying to go to prom, when her mom's trying to stop her and everything, when she first sees her dressed, she's like red, and Carrie's like, no, it's pink. You know?
Yeah.
But like, it's almost like, you know, her mom foreshadowed that by the end of the night, Carrie would be covered in red.
Yes.
In pig's blood, but...
Yeah. It's definitely... It's I mean, it's clearly the best scene in the film, I would argue. It's the strongest imagery wise and just like written out wise. I mean, it's the scene everybody remembers for Carrie for a good reason.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those scenes that like they set up so beautifully from the very first moment of the film, even because like the film starts and ends with blood. You know what I mean? And it also starts and ends with like when she gets her period, when she becomes a woman, is also when she starts to like notice she's telekinetic or whatever. And then at the end, when she's just covered in blood, is whenever she's at the height of her power or whatever.
Yes, exactly. It's just like she just suddenly is lashing out,
Right?
like heavily. It's crazy, dude. But yeah, they definitely don't hold back any punches. They tell you. I mean, they spell it out basically for you that this bucket of blood is going to drop on Carrie, or at least they're planning on doing so, because they show every step of the way. This isn't like just a big surprise. It's kind of like what I mentioned about like the bomb being under the desk and people not knowing. It's essentially that, and I do think it is. It's very well done and believable, because you know it's like. Yeah, we talked about this in other films, but like characters just being unbelievable, whether they be a police officer, basically, where it's like, okay, this person's like terrible at their job. What are they doing? They're just allowing the story to be told. But it's like in that instance, you know, it's already established that Sue was a bully to Carrie, even though she genuinely was trying to help her out and kind of give her a great night. Basically, and the gym teacher, once she sees like, hey, something fishy's going on,
Shushy's happening.
No, this is real sus. But like then it just makes it more sad, because like they could have stopped it, but due to like a misunderstanding, you know, Miss Collins is like, nope, not going to let you do anything to hurt Carrie, basically, not knowing that basically it's allowing the events to occur. But I think the thing that makes it sad about the whole prom thing is those that bullied Carrie died. Those that tried to support Carrie also died. It's very few, mind you. It's basically the gym teacher, and unfortunately Tommy's pretty much out cold. Like it's unconfirmed whether he died or not, but I assume everybody died, given like water spraying everywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole building was on fire, and all the doors were locked. You
know? But that was another thing that I thought like was well done, because I thought that the set piece for the prom, like I loved all the colors they did, and by the point she's controlling the fire hose and getting rid of lights, all there is red, so it already makes her look even more covered in blood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I do think they did confirm that Tommy died, because whenever Sue, or whatever her name, mom is on the phone, she's on the phone with someone, and she's like, yeah, well, she's been sleeping a lot, but the doctor said that's normal, whatever. And she's like, she's like, I don't want her to go to the funerals with Tommy gone and all. Right.
So, yeah, so that is confirmed.
I do think he is dead.
But yeah, that's like the sad thing is like, you know, he ended up dying, but he genuinely did care about Carrie, which just makes it more tragic there. And whenever it comes to the gym teacher, you know, Carrie purposely kills the gym teacher because in her mind she's laughing at her, like she's viewing everybody as like, you're all against me.
Right.
And so it's really kind of like sad, especially seeing all those sweet moments they shared earlier in the film, just to see Carrie just absolutely slam down like a piece of the ceiling fixture onto Miss Collins, killing her. I do like also though the scene, because after they pour the pig's blood and everything and people are laughing, it shows like Chris and John Travolta basically celebrating there. They're like, oh yeah, we got her, and it's like, yeah, let's head out. But then as soon as they hear screaming, they look through the window, and then they're like, oh my god.
Yeah,
you know, like they pretty much made that happen. But that whole scene is super powerful. Granted, it's very exaggerated, like people are flipping onto tables there.
Yeah, it is.
Like they're very much like like doing like they're pulling some crazy cake flips style stunts.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think it just also heightens just the amount of tragedy that's going on and them trying to scream to get out as things get continually worse and worse. And just the image of like Carrie walking out of the gymnasium with the building on fire and then the door slamming behind her. Very powerful. And I also find the scene like her walking home where you could tell she's like just very traumatized, like she has her hands out and everything, stiff as a board walking. And then lo and behold, Chris is like, I'm going to run you over. Like, she is 150% on the kill Carrie train now. And then I love how specifically close they get to Carrie before she does like that whip around and then causes the car to swerve and start tumbling.
Exploding randomly.
It's so cheesy, and I'm like, this is poorly done, but also kind of heightens the cheese. Where, like, to simulate that they're rolling in the car, they actually just take the film frame and just, like, do a twirl.
A little twist.
It's so goofy, but at the same point, I'm like, I love this. It's so cheesy, wonderful, and it's very cathartic seeing the biggest bully to Carrie get blown up. Like, she is...
Yeah. And this part was actually also foreshadowed a little bit, right? Because in that scene where they're all driving and he's like drinking, and then he's like arguing with her, he like almost hits somebody, and she's like, "Watch where you going," or whatever. And so it's like another one of those little just like details where they set it up, because then they're also drinking and then driving, and then they try to hit somebody and they almost do it, but then they crash and die this time.
Yeah, it was definitely a very well done scene, and then that leads to like another well done scene. Like I said, this last third of the film is like basically close to being like absolute cinema for me, because whenever she goes home, you're expecting an immediate confrontation with her mom, because you see like her mom's definitely not okay with it there, because she's like basically was heavily criticizing her multiple times. Like, obviously there's like the first thing at the dinner table where Carrie's like, "Yeah, I'm going to go to prom." She's like, "No, you're not." She's like, "Yes, I am." And then displays her telekinetic powers, and it'd be like, why are you using these devil powers there? So you have that scene going on, and then it's great character development, because you start to see Carrie standing up for herself, being like, "No, I'm going to prom. I want to do this." And then whenever she's getting ready for prom, her mom is like not happy, but still allowing it, because she's like, "Okay, yeah, clearly I'm not going to mess with you," but still has the nerve to criticize Carrie directly, being like, you know, "Your dirty pillows are showing," or whatever. And it's like, "They're breast, Mom. Everybody has them."
Yeah. And she's like, you could tell the mom wants to do anything, say anything to make sure that Carrie stays home. And whenever they hear a honk outside, she's like, "I can tell him you're sick," whatever. And Carrie has to like telekinetically like force choke her down multiple times.
Yes, which I feel like it's just done very well. Like, Carrie's like, "Nope, I'm not taking this. I want to do this. Have a great time." But that leading up, you do get this quick cutaway where the mom's just pacing around the small kitchen table, then decides to start cutting a carrot haphazardly, then starts just slamming the knife on the cutting board. And so you're prepared for a tussle, basically.
A good knifing, yeah.
But the way they do it, they hold their punch back and don't let it go, which I think, in all honesty, makes it more effective, because Carrie goes home, she sees the house is a wreck and covered in candles, like
just all the candles are lit and just everywhere,
and it's like just super eerie and everything, and she's still covered in blood. And, you know, she walks upstairs and doesn't see that the mom's hiding behind the door, and she gets a moment to like have a bath, clean herself up. Like, the mom doesn't try to kill her at that moment. It's only after Carrie like takes a moment to like clean the blood off of her, get back into her nightwear and everything. And then she specifically calls for her mom, because again, she's looking for that same comfort again, because she feels like she was betrayed by everybody. And like the mom is able to comfort her, and you know, and we get more backstory from her mom, which is surprising. It's very surprising that she does kind of talk about like how much she did enjoy sin, but that she should have never had Carrie, basically.
Right. Not only that she should never had Carrie, but that she says specifically, like, I should have given you back to the Lord. Like,
yes.
Like, implying she should have killed little baby Carrie, or because she was a baby of sin or whatever, and that's why she's been such a wreck. And then even then, she's not very good at hiding her intentions, but Carrie's too traumatized to notice whenever she's like, we'll pray for one last time or whatever.
Yes, and it's like so sad just kind of seeing Carrie get stabbed by her own mother there. But it is also great to see like Carrie finally just strike back, you know, launching a series of sharp kitchen gadgets.
Yeah, knives, but potato peelers and stuff too,
and doing that. And then of course, because this film is super symbolic, she is in a very mimic pose of the crucifix there, having both her hands basically being nailed to the wall there, and her head leaning down to the side.
And her eyes open the same way that little creepy crucifix in the closet is.
And that's like a powerful scene as well, because she's basically,
And I noticed, and I don't know, like, I'm not as familiar enough with all the iterations of the Bible and everything to know, but the crucifix that they have in that closet, Jesus has like arrows in like across his chest, and like she has the knives in her in like the same pattern, which is interesting. But I don't remember him getting shot by arrows on the cross. But
no, I
could
don't.
be wrong.
I don't believe so. I think
He
it's
was
one of
stabbed
those
in the side with a spear. Like, he has specific wounds, but I was like, I don't know what belief system believes he was hit by arrows. But
I think it's just artistic interpretation.
I guess so.
Like I believe there's probably been some depictions where they just try to mess up Jesus as much as they can.
Yeah, he was just fucking lit up.
I will say it does lead towards, like, again, unfortunately, Carrie's demise. Which again, I could talk more about, but all this bad stuff that happens hurts way more because you get to genuinely see Carrie be happy, because Tommy does a good job connecting with her, joking around with her, being sweet to her, like,
and just finally you can see her walls just finally break down slowly, one after another, whether it's, you know, we shouldn't go inside, or I don't want to dance, or I don't want to vote for myself to be prom queen, or whatever. And like, he steadily helps her hurdle all those walls, and then to just see it all get torn down.
Yeah, this film is very good, like, comparing the sweet moments to the bitter moments, which I think heightens both, and so you just feel a lot more of it, as opposed to if this film was way too sweet or just downright miserable and bitter throughout the entire thing, which I think heightens it immensely. But it does lead to, like, the tragic end of Carrie whenever the house starts collapsing in on himself, which that's something I really want to discuss with you there, because I know symbolically it's like they're basically sinking to hell there, but actual wise there, I'm trying to think, like, is it because of her telekinetic powers she used that it crumbled and everything, because it's so majorly dramatic there, and it is just kind of sad that, you know, it just makes Carrie's demise super sad, because again, you empathize with her, you understand why she's doing what she's doing. Granted, she did an awful thing and everything else, but at the same point, she had so many oppressors there that did this awful thing and basically made her life, like, made her go through one of the worst moments in her life, that you want to see her succeed. And she does succeed, but she also ends up dying at the end because of it.
Right, yeah, I don't, as far as, like, literally what causes the house to collapse in on itself and sink into the ground, like, yeah, I don't know, like, probably her telekinetic powers, maybe it was Satan claiming his child, maybe it was God condemning them for the sin, you know, I think it's a little bit up for interpretation, but I think symbolically, like, the house collapses after she sees her mother, like, dead on the cross, you know what I mean, like, dead with stigmata, and the mom is the household, you know, it's her home, it's all the only thing she had, even though it was an abusive piece of shit thing to have, you know, it was her mom to come home to, and so, like, that's the last, with her school gone and her mom gone, like, I think her home was the last, like, shell of her life to collapse in on itself and just thus be the end of Carrie. But
yeah, which it just makes it, like, very depressing. I mean, it's one of those things that I feel like it's it's a very well written ending there.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's very sad to see and everything else, but at the same point, it just makes her more of a tragic character, I would argue.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was one of those things as well, because it shows like Sue going to visit her house, and there's like a for sale sign in the symbol of a cross, mind you. They're like perfectly shaped, and it says for sale, and it says Carrie White burns in hell.
Yeah, like somebody painted over it.
Yes, doing that, and it just makes it more sad, because you get it, because people on the outside is like, yeah, this girl just killed everybody. She's an awful person that deserves to burn in hell and everything, kind of just missing like at least kind of the stuff. It's like that weird mix where you sympathize with her even though she did this atrocious act, but I think that's just what makes it more powerful and more sad, kind of seeing that sign. Like that's her legacy that she left behind, is that she's basically the one that killed so many students and her mom.
And also just that like people's perception of her hasn't changed, because in the beginning of the movie they're calling her Scary Carrie and stuff, and bullying her, and then at the end she's still being bullied even after she's dead.
Dude, that's so depressing when you say it like that, man. I will give this interesting bit, because it was specifically like the house sinking and everything, and then that final shot of Carrie's hand popping out of the ground and grabbing Sue, which that is actually Sissy Spacek's arm. She was very adamant about like, I need to be the one in the ground.
That's funny.
Grabbing her, and I feel like it just adds more power to Sue's character, because I feel like Sue now lives with the guilt that this was all caused because it was her idea to have her boyfriend Tommy take Carrie to prom.
Yeah.
Like all of this stuff started happening because of her, and so now she has that guilt holding on to her.
Right. She has to live, not only with the guilt, but like with the death of her boyfriend and most of her classmates, and and also the ultimate demise of Carrie, who's the person she was trying to help out. So.
Yeah, which again, I think it just makes it more sympathetic, as opposed to if she truly was in on the scheme. I think it definitely would have not been as impactful there, but because she genuinely was trying to mend her ways, kind of saying like, okay, yeah, I bullied her, here, let me help, do something really nice for her. And both her and Tommy legitimately cared about Carrie throughout the entirety of it. But it is very suspicious, because the one scene you did mention earlier where like the PE teacher, Miss Collins, is trying to like be supportive of Carrie there, because Carrie's like, I feel like Tommy is trying to gaslight me, basically. She doesn't say that, but basically saying like, basically is trying to manipulate me and trick me into something. And she's like, oh no, I mean, I'm sure it's because you're really beautiful and everything. And then she's like, what are you guys doing?
Right. The next scene, she's like, what's your angle here?
And then they're just very adamant, like, no, we're just trying to give Carrie a nice time. It's like, don't you lie to me.
Carrie White, really? You're going to show up with Carrie White?
Yes, like you, one of the most popular people at school, is going to show up, and they're just like adamant, but it is very uncertain whether they truly are in on it. And I think that's one of the sweet things about like Tommy kind of falling in love with Carrie once he kind of sees who Carrie really is and how connected he got. I just feel like it's very powerful, I guess, to see the scene end on that, and that's what kind of sent chills down my spine the first time I watched it. I'm just like, it stuck with me seeing that. But yeah, I know there's a lot to dissect in like the last third of the film comparatively to the rest of the film, but
absolutely.
Yeah, they just do a solid job with this film, seriously, like just showing how Carrie's character develops as the movie progresses on, because even whenever Tommy asks her out, she's just very awkward, introverted there, and then her response is just to run away.
Yeah, that's how she says no, is to just run as soon as he's like, hey, if you don't have a date to prom, you want to come with me? And she's just like, just bolts.
Yeah, just starts running. It's terrific and great.
But also so sad because that response was probably prompted by like she knows something bad's immediately going to happen because that's what normally would. So she's just going to get out of there.
Yep. And another thing that I think this is another kind of stylistic choice, but like the dress she wears, I know she says it's pink, but it's like whitish pink
it's
there.
Very white, yes.
Which I feel like if I'm getting to humanity's territory, symbolizes her innocence.
Oh yeah, no, for
there.
sure.
But I just think that's just honestly terrific.
I mean, even like when she gets her period in the beginning of the movie and she like accidentally wipes it on the coach's white shorts, you know what I mean? It's like a stain, it's
yes,
what was once pure is now becoming sin or whatever. And even their last name is White, which I'm struggling to make the connection to Walter White. I'm not sure where that. I was waiting for Walt to come in and say, Carrie, it's time to cook.
Carrie, it's time to pray.
Carrie,
Carrie,
I am the one who prays.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, this is a solid, beautifully done film. It's honestly, I'm happy I rewatched it, and I'm surprised I haven't watched it sooner. I think it's just one of those things that watching it the first time, I'm like, oh wow, pretty good. But I think it's because of like how bone chilling it was. It didn't make me want to immediately come back to it. But I think after time has passed and everything, and I'm kind of not really rediscovering the film, but like getting to feel like I get to experience the film again. I'm just like, yeah, no, this is definitely one I need to revisit much sooner. It's honestly kind of like I discovered a new favorite, even though I knew about it already.
Right.
So it's cool. It's cool, and it makes me happy that you didn't know anything about it. Pretty cool overall.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I don't know, man. Is there anything else you wanted to mention with this film in particular, or anything like that?
Boy, howdy, I don't think so.
Yeah, no. I think I'm kind of the same way. I mean, we could nitpick like all the little tiny things there. I guess a special shout out to the tuxedo shopping scene.
That was pretty fun.
It was funny, but again, it's like one of those things like you could have cut it out and it'd be fine, but because they threw it in, it's like, okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, major kudos Brian De Palma for throwing in that scene there.
And I feel like they weren't like a lot of the humor almost is increased with age because they're wearing like these frilly 70s tuxedos, but that was just the style then, you know what I mean? But they're like they're one of them's debating, was like, I don't want the frills, and they're like, no, the frills look good or whatever, and I was like, I wonder if that was supposed to be funny at the time, but it was like kind of amusing now to like look at the fucking fluffy ass suits that they were wearing.
I think it was just all for the tuxedo t-shirt pun.
Exactly.
Oh God, I had forgotten about. I always forget those exist.
And apparently they've been around for a while.
Yep, ever since '76 at the very least.
At the least.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, we will close the book on Carrie for the time being, and we're going to give teasers towards our next episode's film. So this one is a much more recent horror film that came out last year.
Morbius.
No,
we're going to the Morbi theater.
No,
$1 billion.
I'm scared of that film still. Jared Leto is horrifying.
Yeah, and he's also in movies.
Yes. But yeah, basically this film has such top lining actors as Nicholas Hoult, Ralph Fiennes. I always feel like I mispronounce his name. He's Voldemort. And your favorite shrew actor, Anya Taylor-Joy.
Ah, yeah, she's got that shrew face.
Yes. Let's see.
What was Anya Taylor-Joy in last year? Queen's Gambit? I mean, come on.
Yep, and I will say that the title is 2 words.
Super Mario movie.
Yes, that's right. Holy cow. You hit that one out of the park there. And it takes place in a restaurant.
A restaurant? Is that the one about the phone? something, the black phone, the phone.
No, that's I know which one you're talking about. The Blumhouse film. No, the Black Phone. That's not it. Although, definitely a good guess there.
I'm trying to think of horror movies that came out last
yes,
year.
Yes, you're good.
I don't know.
I'm curious on how much of a horror film it is because I have not seen this film, which is why I wanted to put it on the list.
Ooh.
Curious to check it out. But basically, think of a restaurant and the thing you look at.
Menu?
Yeah.
Something menu. Menu something?
Yep, just keep it simple.
The Menu.
Yes, it is The Menu.
I do think I have heard that title. I have no idea what this film is.
Yes, it's been a long time coming there. Basically, I've been too curious about it, so I'm like, hey, what the hey? Let's check this out on the podcast. So thank you all so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see y'all again next time when we're popping the scary with The Menu.
Order up.
The Menu.
Carrie!
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @CoalkirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.